Hi, I want to blog, vlog, and well, be somewhat out there. So here I am, and here we go. I want to start exploring several cinematic and maybe even literary universes, talking about the socioeconomic, economic, and even political aspects of these worlds. But Arachne, you might think, this is boring. Why don't you be a mauler or critical drinker and review the story? Why don't you pull an Angry Joe or Skill Up and review the game? Well, I'm not them, and they do a better job of that than I would. In fact, putting myself anywhere near those names is a bit premature, if ever justified. However, back on track. To talk about politics is easy. There is literature going back hundreds and sometimes thousands of years in the matter. Economics as well, social equality, and so on, has existed as a concern in humanity for a while. What has proven a challenge, and in fact the biggest challenge, is how do I define communism? How do I define capitalism? Is this enough of a spectrum? Well, I can answer the last one first. Yes, the spectrum of capitalism and communism, the free market versus the government control, is a sufficient spectrum. But, no buts. I view these a lot more simply than the world has tried to morph them to all those political and ideological viewpoints they have. On one side, to each according to their abilities, on the other, to each according to their needs. Nice, simple, clear. So why am I still talking about this? Well, the middle bit isn't quite as clear as you would think. On either side we have this fixed point, as described above, but in the middle we have this balloon of contradictions. Where does unpaid overtime fit in? How do paid holidays work? And so on. Well, this is what this vlog and blog is going to explore. First off, the easy one, communism. Communism is the complete lack of a private sector. Government, the public sector, is providing necessary goods, very few unnecessary goods, fare thee well Ferrari, I knew thee not, and people are working according to the main principle of from each according to their abilities to each according to their needs. Time off is not needed, efficiency is not needed, extra effort is not needed. You are the same as the one next to you. You will fill your quota. Ironically, most futuristic societies I've watched come a lot closer to this than people realize, and why I'm starting this up in the first place. Communism is exceptionally hard to pull off in an ideal, uncorrupted form, with good income distribution and the people truly in charge. A real-life example would be the USSR, as close as it came, and in cinema, I would almost say In Time, shows off a fairly good depiction of this, before they illustrate the corruption. Corruption, sadly, is something that has haunted the socialist ideal for many years. On the other side, we have capitalism. This one is a lot more difficult to describe. Capitalism is often touted as a complete lack of government involvement. Only in a purely economic world can this exist. In fact, even in my first year economics class, it was acknowledged that pure capitalism is harder to achieve in the real world than pure communism. However, there is no point to not being able to watch something and go, wow, that's the capitalist ideal. In which case, where am I going to place this peg? Capitalism, to me, is where the government does not interfere in anything purely market-related. This means that police, immigration, the military, and, unfortunately, politicians are required. To be clear, all of these don't have to be public sector provided, they must just exist. I'm a firm believer that even in a purely capitalist society, the essential services need to be government provided. If you leave the provision of necessary welfare goods to the private sector, these will be underprovided in any sufficient shape or form, or in the worst case, you might even end up with the USA medical insurance system. Now, I'm sure you're scratching your heads and wondering why I say capitalism, which is the absence of government interference in a market, must have government interference in the market. The simplest answer to this is another question. What is a market? Well, avoiding textbook definitions, it is a place where buyers and sellers come to trade. The producer, or farmer, of that lovely apple comes to a defined place, digital or physical, to sell their product to a buyer. I'm not convinced that this capitalist utopia has no national borders, and if nations exist, governments have to exist. If governments exist, this means they must be defined. The definition is political in nature, and not quite the point here. However, it lists certain requirements, like protection, laws, and so on. For the market to be provided, it must also be protected, and sometimes even defined by the government of the country. I won't deal with how government and government services are paid for in my capitalist society, as I don't think I've seen anything on the topic, and this would become so idealistic that minds, mine included, would rebel at the thought. How do you pay government without taxes? Which is market interference. while they provide a necessary service. A question for another time. Ready Player One is a society depicting this, at least in my humble opinion. With regards to that fuzzy circle bit in the middle, I think I'll leave that alone for now. That said, what is up with unpaid overtime? It is taking from abilities, but not rewarding to their needs, and it's not rewarding for work done. So it's not socialist or capitalist, and yet somehow still between them. What? And finally, who am I? Well, I have a master's in economics, double undergraduate major in politics and economics, minor in philosophy, lover of mathematics, hater of mathematics and economics, with 5 years experience in economics at an education level and in real work experience. I have an analytical mind, no really, and love to talk. Again, no really. Look forward to my next discussion on Starship Troopers. Coming soon.